unconstitutional. So that happened. The Attorney General had a month to respond. He responded and appealed it.
Pick up that thread, Hannah. Why is Attorney General Dave Sunday appealing this case?
I can't speculate on what's going on in his mind, but the statement that we got from him was that he is the top law enforcement officer for the state. He's in control of the laws that are interpreted and that get in place. So he said that his responsibility was to defend the rule of law and to defend statutes. And he said, quote, without interference of personal opinion or political posturing. And so he sees it as his obligation to make sure that the laws in Pennsylvania, are upholding the Constitution. If there's anything else involved in why he appealed it, I'm not entirely sure, but that was the statement that he gave us.
So Hannah, if I'm reading your story correctly, then Sunday is saying he has to defend a law that is found unconstitutional by the court, but not everyone is in agreement with him.
That's right. Yeah.
Who is going to take issue with this? I understand there's something called the Women's Law Project that says that Sunday doesn't have to do this.
Right. The Women's Law Project, they have some staff attorney lawyers there, and they are, in support of reproductive rights. And they said he's under no obligation to. There's nothing in the Attorney General's Act that says that he has to do this, particularly because the Commonwealth Court has already ruled 4-3 unconstitutional. And the judges said their dissenting arguments, and some of that was that this would be a burden on taxpayers. And then some of them had, anti-abortion stances in their dissenting opinions, the Commonwealth Court judges. But some people, abortion advocates and some lawyers, think that this is not really in line with the law.
And let's go back to the statement, Hannah, that you said you got from Sunday's office, and try to make this easy for us non-legal types to understand. Is Sunday saying that he believes the court got it wrong, or is it something else?
I'm not sure.
I understand.
Yeah.
Because he insisted it's his duty to do this anyway.
He did.
And let's talk about, the importance of Medicaid funding for low-income Pennsylvanians, just to give some more perspective on this story.
Yes, so 3 million Pennsylvanians are on Medicaid. In Allegheny County, where I report from, that's 1 in 5 residents. It covers a third of all births in the state, and so it's helping people have babies. It's helping people with reproductive care. And it's a really important lifeline for people who are low income, people who are in between jobs. And so that's why a lot of these advocates are a little bit up in arms about the appeal, because it covers so many Pennsylvanians. It's not like it's 1% of the population or 0.5% of the population.
Hannah, try to summarize for us then the issue that is before the Supreme Court, because they're going to address this matter next, right?
Yes, this goes back to the Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court, and they've already ruled in favor of abortion before. In 2024, they ruled in favor of abortion. And so, we can't predict entirely what's going to happen. They could rule in favor of abortion again and just settle the case. But it really creates a lot of legislative involvement and chaos, right, for patients and for advocates who maybe aren't working directly with insurance companies to understand billing and codes and all of that. Is abortion legal? Is Medicaid, abortion is legal, but, is Medicaid funding covered for it? Who is under that? All of these questions that patients and advocates are having to ask themselves, it's creating a little bit, it's a legal fight that any one person without a law background struggles to understand, myself included. When I was writing the story, I had to really grasp it, right?
And we certainly appreciate your help in trying to comprehend this issue. So given all this legal back and forth, I don't want our viewers to get confused. In other words, where does the law stand at this moment for using Medicaid funds for abortion?
Yes, so the Department of Human Services have said that they are sort of working within the bounds of the law to update their system for Medicaid billing. And so I wouldn't say that it's banned at this moment. You know, the laws are slow that way. I can't speculate on if someone with Medicaid walked into a Planned Parenthood today, whether they would be, you know, ring, ring, in the door. Because of how slowly these processes play out. But abortion is legal in Pennsylvania. I believe we're good to go, you know, up to 24 weeks? Correct me if I'm wrong. And so we're good to go at this moment. It'll depend on how the state Supreme Court rules.
Understood. Okay, thank you for that update. Hannah Webster, health reporter at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Thanks for having me.
More of the PCN Capitol Preview after a short break.
Stay informed about politics and policy. The Capitol Blue Cross Public Affairs Forum features a monthly speaker from government, the media, or public policy to educate viewers on the status of politics in both the state and federal government. Watch the Capitol Blue Cross Public Affairs Forum every month on PCN or stream it with PCN Select. PCN is Pennsylvania Politics and Policy. Take a seat in the courtroom and see the real-life cases affecting Pennsylvanians today. Hear the arguments from both sides with full transparency, exclusively on PCN. Watch the Commonwealth, Superior, and Supreme Courts on cable and the PCN Select streaming service. Visit PCNTV.com for the complete schedule. PCN, Pennsylvania Politics and Policy.
Welcome back. Our guests today are Mai Miksic, Executive Director of the Executive Director of Children First PA, Marcus Hite, Executive Director of the PA Association of Public Cyber Charter Schools, and Aaron Chapin, President of the PA State Education Association. Welcome, everyone.
Morning.
Aaron, let's start with you. How much reliance do schools have on funding from the state?
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It's extremely important. Obviously in communities around the Commonwealth, there are community tax bases that are being used, but the communities can't cover everything. And there is a constitutional obligation for the state to be making sure that our public schools in Pennsylvania are being funded properly. And of course, throughout the state, as we've seen for many decades, there are some communities that have been improperly and unconstitutionally funded. But the Pennsylvania government plays a huge role in the education of our students across the Commonwealth.
Mai, how do you see it?
Well, it's not just about the K-12 system. I see it as just as important for the state to be contributing to our early child education system as well, making sure that our children are prepared to enter the school districts in their communities.
And Marcus, what about the view from the cyber charter schools?
Sure. Well, thank you again, Larry, for the time today. And I have to agree with Aaron is, education does have a big component, but I think what we also got to make sure that we have the opportunity for parents to make that choice as to what is the best educational opportunity. And when you kind of look at the big picture, under Pennsylvania law, cyber charter schools, bricks and mortar charter schools, they are considered public school districts. So I think, when it comes down to something like that, we're just looking for a fair playing field to make sure that every student, every child in Pennsylvania gets that opportunity for the best education possible for them.
And Marcus, keep the floor for a moment and consider what's the correlation, would you say, between funding and student achievement?
So that's a great question. And I think, there is that kind of idea out there that cyber charter schools are, a little bit behind. We've seen the results. But I think one of the missing facts with this is, Larry, is a lot of these students that are coming into cyber charter are coming in from programs where they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years behind their cohorts. So they have to make it up. So, one of the things is, do I really think that the PIM system or what is used by PD is a correct measurement of success? I'm a little bit up in the air on that. But I think what we have to look at is when these students are coming in, they're getting the education they need. And it's not that they're leaving these schools because of funding or anything like that. They're leaving these schools because of ideas of bullying, IEP services. And I think that's the thing that we want to get back to, or that's the foundation, is the right of a parent to choose what is the best educational environment should be with the parent. And
excuse me, Marcus, what was that second item? IUP services?
IEPs. If they have like an IEP service.
IEP.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so basically what that is if a student has some type of correctional or has some type of disability that they need that's where they're finding some opportunities. And the last thing I'll say is, there's the kind of the idea out there that cyber charter is trying to move public school districts away. Absolutely not. I think what we really need to look at is how can we create an educational environment where all students can succeed in Pennsylvania? And I think it's a collaboration that could happen.
Mai, I think you see what I'm getting at. Is there necessarily a connection between an abundance of funding and student achievement?
I mean, I honestly don't think it's an idea that cyber charters are underperforming or not serving their kids as well. I mean, the facts are they are some of the lowest performing schools in this Commonwealth, and we want to make sure that children who are in those schools, students that are in their schools, are getting the same education as their peers in brick and mortar public schools.
Well, Aaron, back to the original question then, is more funding necessarily going to translate into better student achievement?
Well, absolutely. And look, our public schools in Pennsylvania, we service 1.7 million students. And our schools across the Commonwealth, they do amazing things. But let's be frank about it, is that we do need more funding. And the Commonwealth Court back in 2023 said that our schools are being drastically underfunded, and the basic, we had a funding commission that agreed. And so for the last 2 years, we've seen legislators and the governor step up and provide these resources that are long overdue. We've had decades where our students just have not been receiving the funding they need. And absolutely, if we provide our schools, our educators, our support staff with the money that they really need to educate our students, we would see even greater, amazing results. And that's just what it is. We need to provide the resources so we can provide more staff. We need to be able to provide more programs. And we're going to see even greater results out of our public schools. So yeah, it's what our kids deserve. We just need more resources.
Well, Aaron, we're only a few minutes into our program, and already you've mentioned twice the 2023 Commonwealth Court ruling that ruled that PA's system of funding was unconstitutional. Can you give us some details beyond that? Was there some kind of remedy recommended by the court?
Sure. So we had some school districts that filed a lawsuit, and the Commonwealth Court decided, look, they looked back and they've seen for decades, generations, that we've had certain communities, whether it's rural or suburban or even urban districts, where they've just been underfunded for just generations. And these students have been behind the 8 ball for so long. And so we then had a funding commission that traveled across the state. They had hearings in every different corner of the Commonwealth where they had experts come in from school districts or different vantage points. And once that the hearings were done, they issued an opinion. Then at that point, the legislators in Pennsylvania, they stepped up to then start to have some state budgets, starting with Governor Shapiro a few years ago, saying we need to invest. And so we have a great amount of money that's gone into adequacy funding. Over $565 million a year has been going in. And so up to this point, if you include what the governor's proposing this year, we'll see over $3 billion being invested into public education. It's bold, but it's exactly what our students need right now.
So let's talk more about this adequacy funding. This is suddenly a phrase that is central to this whole debate about education funding. And so the court ruling was in 2023, and Governor Shapiro put out his first round of adequacy dollars in 2024. So that happened again in 2025. So now legislators are considering a third round of adequacy dollars, and not unreasonably, they expect to see some performance in exchange for this investment. Mai.
Well, I think we can see not just out of the adequacy funding, but also historically, when we have infused our schools with money, kids do better. I mean, we saw that with the COVID dollars that came in, specifically in the Southeast. We saw some significant improvements in performance in the school district of Philadelphia in particular. And today is actually important because our school funding coalition, PA Schools Work, has a report coming out today that we are sharing with lawmakers in the Capitol that talks about how these adequacy dollars are being spent, and they are a game changer for our kids.
Give us a quick preview of that report, please.
Sure. The report shows that school districts that are getting the adequacy dollars are hiring reading tutors. They are investing in anti-bullying programs. They are focused on giving the high-impact tutoring that kids need to improve their reading
Funding
scores.
for anti-bullying. I want to make sure I heard you.
Yes, yes, yes. And so, I mean, school districts in the Southeast in particular are really stepping up with these dollars to help our kids.
Yeah, no, I couldn't disagree with what the two speakers said there, that, yeah, funding is a key component. But one of the concerns that we have from the cyber charter schools is some of this funding that is going over to the public school district is coming from this. So I think if you use the argument that funding is going to increase performance and that type of thing, then if there is those concerns that the cyber charter schools are not performing at the level that they should, then why are they going to be the only ones that receive these cuts? So I think if we're going to look, again, to a fair and balanced formula to make sure that there's a situation where everybody can succeed. I do agree also that the funding formula, when you look at, if we just take, for example, what the governor just passed last year, roughly about $178 million of reform that was taken from cyber over to public school districts. If we're looking at the entire state of Pennsylvania with 500 school districts, over 52% of the funding was going to 20 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania, where the other 480 had to fight over that 48%. So I think, when we're looking at, are we really trying to make sure that every student in Pennsylvania, and the last comment I'll make is also when you look over that top 20 list, the association has put out a report earlier this year as well too that stated we're seeing declining enrollment. It has been something that's been mentioned by the lawmakers. As this declining enrollment has increased, we're also seeing increase in expenses. Now, granted, there are things like that, but I think we just need to make sure that we're leveling the playing field.
Aaron first and then Mai.
I think, Mai was spot on. Like, we've seen this investment, this infusion of money over the last 2 years, and we've seen an increase in hiring of staff, which is drastically reducing some class sizes across the Commonwealth. We've seen STEM programs introduced, which is obviously in this day and age so important to our students. We've seen the literacy and math coaching. But again, Governor Shapiro and the legislature, in this budget alone, it's another $100 million for school safety and mental health, which is so important to our schools right now and to our students. They're getting the help that they really need. And so we're really providing our students with the kind of programs that they've been needing for such a long time.
I would say fair and balanced only matters so much as everybody starts on the same playing field, and that's just not true. We know that the school districts that are getting those adequacy dollars started behind when it came to funding. I walk the halls of some of those schools. Some of them don't even have toilet paper. That's how bad it is. So we cannot let our students go to schools where they don't have what they need to learn in a safe environment. Fair and balanced also means that it's based on the operating costs of that school district. And it just doesn't cost as much to run a cyber program as it does a brick and mortar school.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just real quick, Larry, to what Mai said there is on the cost. The legislature did take that into consideration when they put the charter school law out by implementing what's called a PD 363. So the cost that goes to a cyber school is only a percentage of what that school district is actually collecting from the taxpayers. So yes, with a cyber charter school, you don't need transportation expenses, debt service, facilities maintenance. That's taken out in the formula. So I think when you look at it, it's the educational component, and I think the real question is, again, if we're talking fair and balanced here, if you're asking a cyber charter school to be run at a certain rate for a student, then if you take that back into the PD 363, can these school districts operate on that same budget? And I think that's the real question that needs to be asked because of the way the formula is set up.
So let's get back to the subject of the adequacy funds. And as we said before, we're going into a potential third phase of adequacy dollars. So let's consider this question. Are there limitations to how these adequacy dollars can be spent?
I think there's certain buckets that we've got. There's a lot. Again, if you look at how much money is being proposed by Governor Shapiro in this budget, so this will add over $3 billion in new money. And there are other areas where money is being designated for. Like there's another $50 million for special education. We've got around $15 million for our CTC programs, which are so vital right now in this day and age in our Commonwealth. Again, there's transportation. There's $15 million for transportation. So there are different avenues where some of this money is being infused into because we've got lots of areas in our schools, obviously, that need to be addressed. We've got over $100 million that's being proposed for infrastructure alone. And in the last few years, we've had like 200 schools seeing projects being done that are so desperately needed because the school facilities, they need to be in certain conditions for our students to learn properly. And, they need to be taken care of, and they've been falling apart across the Commonwealth.
Now, my understanding is adequacy funding can't pay for building improvements.
No, again, adequacy funding is specifically to help schools that have been, generationally underfunded, to help them get to a spot where they are going to be able to take care of their students like they should have been for decades.
I would say that I take issue with the question of whether there should be limitations on how the money should be spent. Because honestly, I think implicit in that question is this idea the school districts are misspending the money.
Are there limitations?
Well, yes, there are limitations, and you just cited one of them is the capital infrastructure and but school districts, I want to set the record straight, are spending this money the right way. They're hiring staff. They're investing in programs. They're doing what they need to, and it's still not enough. In school districts like Philadelphia, last week, they just passed a budget that included 340 cuts to positions. They have a structural deficit. They need this money more than ever. And I think the lawmakers in Harrisburg understand that.
Mai, keep the floor for a minute and consider a very basic question. What do our kids need before they enter grade school?
Oh.
And there's been much research and there's been progress on this front too, that it is important what a child learns or is exposed to before they go to grade school.
Absolutely. We've seen governor after governor in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania invest in early learning, and we're so excited that this year that legacy is going to continue. What we're really excited about is a renewed commitment to the early childhood education workforce. So the governor's proposed budget includes an increase of $10 million for a recruitment and retention fund for early childhood teachers. And so that's up from the $25 million last year. This is going to really add to the household incomes of those early childhood teachers who make, on average, according to the IFO, $15 an hour.
Now, Mai, tell me more about what the children are actually exposed to as far as their education is concerned, putting funding aside.
Yeah.
Why is this, what is the education they're getting before they enter grade school? What are they exposed to? I didn't go through that, so this is an education for me.
Well, those foundational years, 0 to 5, are so important for growth and preparation for the K-12 system. And so in those early years, we're hoping to expose them to the alphabet, to phonemic awareness, to vocabulary, to each other, socio-emotional growth, social capital in terms of meeting other parents, meeting other family members, creating community. That's what early learning does so well, is creating that community of learning, those foundational skills, so that when they enter kindergarten, they know their alphabet, they know their numbers, they're ready to learn. And what we see across the board is when kids don't get those foundational learning years, that they actually have to do a lot of catch up when they get to kindergarten.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on, Mai. Like, early childhood education is such an important component to the K-12 system. Not only is it going to be an indicator of how they're going to do, success-wise when they're in school, but it's also an indicator of how they're going to be doing in their adult life, whether it's college or their careers, which again is going to be a great investment in our communities in the end. So it's a huge, huge investment that the governor and legislators have been making. And again, there's another $50 million additional money that's being proposed this year. So it's money that needs to be there and needs to be spent. These kids need to have as many opportunities to succeed before they can get into the K-12 system.
Aaron, is there a cyber charter equivalent to what we're talking about here?
So actually, there is not, because the cyber charter school starts at the K through 12. But there are early intervention programs that parents do, that type of thing. But again, I think it's one of those things where the concept here is, and I'll just take a sidestep here real quick, but we're dealing with a public school code, Larry, that was done in 1949. And I think if we really want to help Pennsylvania go from maybe top 5 in the nation in spend per student, but yet our outcomes are not there, I think we really need to look at collaboration amongst public school districts, cyber schools, early education, to really try to maybe try to look to reform and create an educational system where Pennsylvania can be proud of the students that come out. I'm not saying they're not proud now, but Pennsylvania can be very innovative in this if we just frankly came to the table and sat down and see how it could all work together.
And how might a day go for a student enrolled in a cyber charter school? Again, I've never been exposed to this, so walk us through slowly how a day might look.
Sure. No, I really appreciate the question. And the first thing I'll say is there are 2 different types of cyber charter schools that are out there. There are some of these that are done by the school districts, and then obviously the ones that are the standalones, which the association represents those families with. And the type of learning is, there's 2 types of learning. It's asynchronous and synchronous learning. At the cyber charter school level, when you have a PA Cyber or a Commonwealth Charter Academy or Insight or something to that effect, those students, they must sign on every single day. They have live lessons. So it is basically just an interaction with the teacher back and forth. They must do exams, homework, that all type of thing.
How many students are interacting with the cyber teacher at any given time, on the average?
It could be anywhere. I think if you look at most of the schools on the elementary side, it's probably in the 17 to 20 person range, middle school a little bit more, and high school. But all those, the teacher is basically the teacher, and they have all the screens because of what was passed in Act 47 of 2025 by the legislature, signed by the governor. They are required to be on camera. So there is access to see these students on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And so that's really what a day looks like from a cyber. But again, it's not that these families are going just to cyber because it's an option for them out there. Something is happening at their traditional bricks and mortar school district that is putting them in that position. And that's why when we see increases of enrollment, these school districts still have these issues that should be addressed by the local school boards.
And bullying could be one of those issues.
Absolutely, 100%.
Can you think of another one offhand?
Sure. I mean, you have bullying, you have mental health issues, IEP issues, flexibility.
Now tell me about IEP again. That has something to do with disabilities.
Yeah, so basically what that is, Larry, is you have a student that comes in. They are assessed by a counselor as to if they need remedial math, if they need remedial reading or something like that, if they have to be in a special classroom for tests, that type. Public school districts do the same thing. They assess and they move in that direction as well too.
It stands for Individualized Education Plan. So it just says that particular student has needs that need to be accommodated.
And as far as the governor's new budget is concerned, and once again, it's an increase for education. And is there any discretion as to how those dollars are going to be spent? Maybe not to be confused with the adequacy dollars. Come to think of it, maybe that's a separate pot of money.
And there are, as I explained a little bit earlier, there are different avenues where the funding is being proposed, specific areas like special education, transportation, our CTC school programs. So we have lots of different avenues, even around $15 million in additional money for universal breakfast, which are a huge component, because as I saw as a 5th grade teacher, I had kids come to school all the time that were just hungry. And it's hard to start the day for learning. It meant increased trips to the nurse's office. This is a great program. You know, in the last school year, there were almost over 90 million free breakfasts that were being provided to our students, which has really made it a huge impact on our schools.
Well, thanks, everyone. I'm going to give you a break just for a minute, because we're going to look at program notes for here on PCN. On the issues has Roxanne Brown, the new president of the United Steelworkers. She'll be here on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Journalist Roundtable this week, our guest will be Mark Levy from the Associated Press, Gillian McGoldrick from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Whitney Downard from the Pennsylvania Capitol Star. That's on Thursday at 7 p.m. Scott Martin, Majority Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, will be the guest at the Capitol Blue Cross Forum on Thursday at 7:30 p.m. On the history and culture side of programming, we explore the day 26-year-old Colonel George Washington put himself between two firing lines that had mistaken each other for the enemy. The Friendly Fire incident is on today at 9 p.m. Later on in the Revolutionary War, a plot was hatched to replace Washington as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. We'll tell you about the political and military conspiracy known as the Conway Cabal Wednesday at 9 p.m. You can watch this show and all our public affairs programming free of charge by visiting PCNselect.com. And while you're there, you can download our streaming service, PCN Select. PCN is everything Pennsylvania. We're a 501c3 nonprofit television network that relies on viewers like you. To make a donation, visit PCNTV.com. All right, we're talking about education funding today, and now's a good opportunity to find out about your respective organizations. And let's hear from you first.
PSEA, the Pennsylvania State Education Association, we represent 177,000 members. It's professional members, it's our support staff. We have student members that are in college, as well as our retirees. And we educate 1.7 million students in our public school system. And we also represent about 1,000 members as well in the cyber charters. So we represent a variety of interests, in our public schools.
How about you, Mai?
I'm the executive director for Children First. We are a 46-year-old advocacy organization that works on all things related to children, and that includes education, but it also includes things like juvenile justice, early child education, health care, mental health, a variety of issues that we not only work with lawmakers, but also with administrators to improve the systems that are designed to support children.
And what are some of the issues that are recently very interesting to you?
Besides
the state budget.
I think the early intervention system, as we were talking about earlier, has a lot of room for improvement, because this is about capturing developmental delays that are present in the very earliest years and making sure those kids get on the right track. So that's not even about the budget. Like, we want more dollars going into that system. We also want to reform the system so that those children are getting timely screenings, that their services, if identified that they need them, start right away. And we see in that system the same systems in the education system where there's a workforce shortage. So that is the reason why children are not getting early enough screenings, or that's the reason they're not getting a speech therapist on time. So those are systems that we want to work on, not just getting funding for, but actually streamlining.
And how about you, Marcus? Tell us about cyber charter schools, and their history goes back a few years.
Sure. The cyber charter law went into effect in the early 2000s, and just in January 2024, several schools got together with some of the steps that were being taken by the legislature to create this advocacy group, which I'm honored to be the executive director of. And these schools, there's 13 cyber charter schools in the state of Pennsylvania. Not all schools are a part of the association, but the association itself represents 65,000, close to that, plus families across the state who have selected this as the educational opportunity for what they'd like to see their students thrive in.
Now, I'm sure it's not news to you three that we had a long impasse, the state budget. It was months before that was signed up. And some districts had to cope. They had to get through that. And Aaron, would you tell me how districts did get over that hump funding-wise? Did they borrow money from whom?
Yeah, it was a really unfortunate situation back in the summer and the fall of 2025. Because as we went through the summer, first of all, school districts at the end of June are already setting their budgets, and they needed to know what the state was going to be doing in the first place, which makes it very challenging. And so as the school year started, they were starting to having to use their fund balances, which that's what they're there for. But as the fall months went on, we had some school districts that were forced to take out loans of tens of millions of dollars to cover their costs because the state budget hadn't been passed. And unfortunately, that cost of interest then had to be covered by the taxpayers of their communities. And it was a really unfortunate situation. And as we got into the month of November—
Does that mean higher property taxes?
In the end, when they have to reassess, when they're evaluating how they're going to take care of their budget for the next year, absolutely. It's money that they weren't expecting to spend. But as we were getting into the month of November last year, they were going to have to make some tough decisions. Were they going to stay open? Were they going to have to let staff off, or they got to furlough them? And obviously, this was making the communities very nervous. It's, our kids need to keep getting educated, but the lack of a budget—
fall behind.
Well, no, but there were many districts across the Commonwealth that were considering, as they moved into December and January, to have to shut the doors to the students, and that's not something we should ever having to be doing in this day and age.
How about you, Mai? How did the world of early child education react to this budget impasse and then trying to recover from it?
Sure. So the child care subsidy world, so that's the funding stream that supports some of our lowest income children, is not on the list that would lose funding or not get funding during an impasse. But pre-K programs, pre-K counts programs were, and so we did see some small business operators who have pre-K counts programs really start to scramble during those months where there was a budget impasse. And some of them were thinking about taking loans. Some of them did take out loans because they didn't want to let go of their staff, and they had classrooms of children that needed teachers. And so we have to think about the fact that these kinds of impasses don't just affect large school districts. They affect small businesses that are run by mom and pops.
And how about the effects on the cyber charter world during the budget impasse?
Larry, exactly what Aaron said. Whenever there is a budget impasse, because of the way it is set up within the state of the school districts reimbursing the cyber charters, there's obviously a delay there. So there's a delay in funding. But I'll take it one step further is, as Aaron mentioned, that the concern with public school districts was the delay and possibly shutting the doors, because cyber charter not only had the budget impasse, but also took the hit on the reform. As the budgets had already been passed in June previously, now they were told in December that they're having a reduction in funding from the state. So we had schools like Agora Cyber Charter School that had to furlough employees. And so what does that do? That's going to impact on that educational level. So, obviously we are against any type of cut or anything like that, but more so, you make a cut in the middle of a school year when these schools have already, contracted with vendors, they're already halfway through the educational opportunities for these students, and now you have all this pressure put on them. It was really a double whammy for the cyber charter community.
Well, I understand school districts can get frustrated with having to pay for state-mandated programs. It seems whenever that phrase comes up, state-mandated, sometimes people get tense.
Well, I mean, it's not that educators and school districts don't want to be teaching these certain kind of programs, but the problem is, how much can you do during a school day? There's only so much that can be crammed into that 7-8 hour time span, and so. These might be great ideas, but sometimes it's just really hard to implement them. It's hard to find 5 minutes sometimes, especially when we've got standardized testing, which does unfortunately take up the preparation and then the implementation of it. It's something has to give, and so what is it? What are you going to give up in order to bring something new into the school districts?
Yeah, Larry, I have to agree with Aaron. Any type of state-funded mandate that comes to the cyber charter community, obviously there's going to be a cost with that as well too. And I think Aaron obviously sees that with the public school districts. The concern that we have from the cyber charter is all of these mandates that have been done, whether it's the truancy, whether it's the residency verification, that type of thing, the only sector that was singled out in this was the cyber charter. And so, for example, I go back to the comment I made previously on like the wellness checks about making sure that these students are safe. Public school districts, bricks and mortar charter schools, they have their own virtual academies as well. But all of this residency, wellness, and truancy type of thing was just basically centered on the cyber charter world. So the question I have to ask is, if the intent of the legislature is to make sure that all families in Pennsylvania are safe and their students are being taken care of and they are safe, then why just take one sector out? Why not apply to all public school districts within the state of Pennsylvania?
And what about the level of Mai on early child education? Are there certain mandates? Are there things that you're compelled to do? Can you enlighten us?
Well, in the early child education field, it's about the health and safety of kids. And so there are very few regulations that I would say, there are very few regulations that I would say we need to do away with. Those regulations are there for a reason.
What are some of the good regulations?
Well, staff to child ratios, for example.
Okay.
We cannot even begin to think about changing those because they are the difference between healthy, safety kids and a child death and a child care programs. And we have seen across the country states considering on relaxing some of those rules. And when you're talking about little kids, when you're talking about infants, we cannot begin to even think about changing those staff to child ratios. I just want to go back to the wellness checks. I don't believe that, I believe that there was resistance to some of those wellness checks, and I think that's why they were implemented in the first place. I just don't want there to be this narrative that public schools are resistant to wellness checks. I mean, that's why we have guidance counselors. That's why we have SEL teachers. That's why we have social workers in our schools. I think that's already built into the structure of brick and mortar public schools.
Let's turn away from the subject of funding for now, at least the budget per se, and let's consider something that's important to the future of education. And certainly that's a number of teachers who enter the field. So is the state doing anything to encourage people to come into this field? How does it look recently?
Yeah, so on the cyber charter, as our schools are increasing enrollment and growing, that type of thing, the demand that is out there for teachers, that type of thing, is great. But yet at the same time, the supply is there as well too.
And they want to specifically do cyber charter, at least for your purposes.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Larry. So what we're seeing a lot is not only are we seeing individuals that are coming out of college that want to go into that, we're also seeing retired teachers that want to get back into the teaching profession. We're also seeing business leaders. The way the cyber charter looks at it is whenever they have an individual, they want to make sure that they have an individual that really knows that knowledge base and really has a good understanding of whatever the subject matter. So that's why they do have that flexibility where they can hire individuals that maybe don't have a teaching certificate, that type of thing.
I see. And come to think of it, these teachers can be at home too, and probably in most cases they are?
Different schools have different requirements. Some have requirements where they have to be at one of the drop-in or family centers, the facilities. Some of them can be from remote. It's all dependent on which school you're talking about.
Ever since COVID, Larry, we've in the Commonwealth, the governor especially, he's had a student-teacher stipend where student teachers in their last semester they can get $10,000 if they for their student teaching experience. That's been a great barrier for us to break down in Pennsylvania because it keeps our student teachers in this profession where they might be dropping out because they just can't afford to do that because they have to work. That's their full-time job and they're not supposed to have any side jobs. It makes it really hard. But at PSCA, we've also invested in our high schools. We've had Educators Rising. It's a great program across the Commonwealth where high school students are getting the experiences and a look at what it takes to be a public school teacher. We've seen great success. I was just at an event 2 weeks ago where there was about 16 teachers, kids from one school district where they were signing their letter of intent to go to college to be teachers. So there is a lot of excitement out there. We just needed to keep recruiting. And that, I think, where we've seen over the last decade or so, the number of teachers coming into our school system go down, I think we're starting to really see a rebound. And between the governor and our efforts, I think there's a lot of excitement brewing out there. And I think we're going to see about a decade from now, really a complete reversal in this teacher shortage.
Mai, what about recruiting for early child education? And tell us briefly, what kind of qualifications do these people have?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, because I always like to point out that many of these early childhood teachers have bachelor's degrees. Some of them even have master's degrees. Some of them are even qualified to teach in public schools because they have the certification to teach up to higher grades. But they choose to work with the little kids because they love their jobs. And that's why the Recruitment and Retention Fund for Child Care Teachers is so important. It is not just money in their pockets so they can buy groceries and pay for gas. It's a recognition of their workforce and how essential they are to our economy.
Our guests have been Mai Miksic, Executive Director of Children First PA, Marcus Hite, Executive Director of the PA Association of Public Cyber Charter Schools, and Aaron Chapin, President of the PA State Education Association. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah.
PCN's Ellen Franz talked to Senator Kristin Phillips Hill about property upgrades funded by taxpayers.
Welcome to our program. You've proposed legislation to prevent taxpayer dollars from being used on private property renovations. What inspired you to propose this bill?
It was really a desire to protect both the governor and his family, at the same time protecting taxpayers. And so the legislation that I crafted, Senate Bill 1219, seeks to really thread that important needle.
How would this bill work to prevent this from happening?
So I think it's important to note that the process that was used by the governor's administration raised a lot of questions about making improvements to his personal property, not with regard to the governor's official residence in Harrisburg. And what it seeks to do is to put a taxpayer lien onto his property so that taxpayers would be made whole upon the sale or the transfer of that property. So I think back to the hardworking taxpayers in my home county of York, and I think it's really difficult for them to imagine having taxpayers pay for upgrades that are almost twice the value of the home itself. And so that was really difficult for my constituents to wrap their heads around. So recognizing that it's important for the governor of the Commonwealth and his family to be protected, we wanted to make sure that we could do that in a way that was respectful of the people who pay the bills.
You briefly mentioned this, but what would happen if the property then gets sold?
So at that time, it would be the responsibility of the governor to pay the taxpayers back. So that would seek to make the taxpayers whole for the almost $1.2 million of improvements that were engaged in by the Commonwealth for the governor's personal residence.
Why is it important to you to have transparency when it comes to taxpayer-funded projects?
You know, I think it's a very dangerous precedent for us to use taxpayer dollars to pay for improvements to people's personal residence. You know, if funds are used for a private residence, what does that mean in the future for unchecked spending and potentially who else may qualify for this type of spending. We don't have anything currently in statute with regard to whether this is allowed or not allowed. We don't expressly say that you can do this. As a matter of fact, the Emergency Procurement Code very explicitly states that you cannot do this. So, who else would be eligible? How much could be spent? How would that spending be monitored? How would people be reimbursed, meaning the taxpayer? What is considered appropriate? Nothing is contemplated. Right now, the law does not speak to this. The procurement code says that it can't be done. So, regardless of whether these funds are expended by taxpayers, have to really guard against a potentially dangerous precedent. At the same time, we also need to safeguard the governor, his family, and we need to safeguard the taxpayers.
What feedback have you heard regarding this bill?
What I'm hearing from my constituents is they're very uncomfortable with their taxpayer dollars being spent on the governor's private residence. The governor's personal home is valued at $700,000. So we're talking about making improvements that cost twice as much as their home is valued at. And so the feedback from my constituents who are hardworking taxpayers is, this just is not something that they are comfortable with. So again, the legislation simply says that if that money gets released and when the Shapiros sell or transfer their property, taxpayers are made whole because the state would have that lien on their property. And so without legislative authorization to engage in that spending, it's a really dangerous precedent, and we wouldn't be able to know where to draw the line. So again, no legislative authority, no legal precedent, too many questions to be asked, and taxpayers again need to be made whole. And there's a lot of what ifs. What if the governor has a vacation home? What if the governor has a private office? Are we going to upgrade those places to enhance security at the expense of taxpayer dollars? And over $1 million, we're not just talking about a few new cameras or maybe more secure doors and locks. It's really a significant amount of money that has been invested with no legislative oversight. And I think back, I'm from York County. Our previous governor, Governor Wolf, who was this governor's predecessor, he did not live in the governor's mansion, and that was his choice, right? But he made improvements to his own personal property with his own money to accommodate his family's desire to remain in York County. And when you think about it, when the Shapiros sell their private home, there's going to be a financial gain from the sale and that significant investment of almost $1.2 million by the taxpayers. So I've been charged by the people that I represent with the responsibility to stand up for them. And that's why I have to stand up and say, again, we have to put taxpayers into a place of priority, as well as the governor's safety and his family's safety. And we have to make sure we don't set a really dangerous precedent. So whether the funds are appropriated or not, we need a backstop. And that backstop is Senate Bill 1219, really to ensure that the Shapiros or really anyone else who sits in that position of governor are not using the governor's official office for a private pecuniary benefit. And that's really what Senate Bill 1219 is about.
Senator Kristin Phillips Hill, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks to Ellen for that interview. Here's a reminder about On the Issues this week. Our guest will be Roxanne Brown, the new president of the United Steelworkers. She'll be here tomorrow at 7 p.m. That's it for the PCN Capitol Preview. I'm Larry Kasper. Thanks for watching.
Experience communities in action through lively and in-depth conversations on Inside Pennsylvania Boroughs. Join our host and Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs Executive Director Chris Kapp as he moderates discussions on Main Street local issues vital to all Pennsylvanians across the Commonwealth. We invite you to make a difference in your hometown and join us on Sundays right here on PCN.
It's time to hit the road. Pennsylvania Country Roads. Join host Dave Williams as he travels the back roads to uncover the hidden gems and hometown favorites that make Pennsylvania great. From the farms that feed us to the businesses that bring communities together, Dave takes you behind the scenes like never before. Watch Pennsylvania Country Roads Sunday at 7 a.m. on cable or stream on demand with PCN Select. PCN is the place to follow the 2026 election. Stay informed on the races for governor, lieutenant governor, and key congressional districts. See one-on-one candidate interviews, candidate forums, and more. Available anytime for free with PCN Select. Go to PCNselect.com to start watching today. PCN is Pennsylvania Politics and Policy.
So what happened during the Fries Rebellion?
It's pronounced freeze.
We did not fight and bleed in their revolution simply to change the fate of our tax collector! Yeah!
They're gonna burn down the town.
Has anything like this ever happened to you before?
No.
This was the home of Jacob Schaefer, one of the rebels. I like that tattoo. Any special meaning behind it?
I honestly thought that they were gonna get killed.
Kayla, are you okay?
Actually, I learned a lot.
You look like you've seen a ghost.
Maybe I have. We gotta go.
Kayla, what'd you see?
This PCN postcard, providing images from around the state, is proudly sponsored by the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs, PSAB, representing the interests of Pennsylvania boroughs since 1911. PCN is the place to follow the 2026 election. Stay informed on the races for governor, lieutenant governor, and key congressional districts. See one-on-one candidate interviews, candidate forums, and more. Available anytime for free with PCN Select. Go to PCNselect.com to start watching today. PCN is Pennsylvania Politics and Policy. Stay informed about politics and policy. The Capitol Blue Cross Public Affairs Forum features a monthly speaker from government, the media, or public policy to educate viewers on the status of politics in both the state and federal government. Watch the Capitol Blue Cross Public Affairs Forum every month on PCN or stream it with PCN Select. PCN is Pennsylvania Politics and Policy. Little Round Top, Devil's Den, Pickett's Charge, Culp's Hill, Seminary Ridge, Cemetery Hill. Watch hundreds of hours of Gettysburg content with PCN Select. Download PCN Select on your streaming device and visit PCNselect.com to start watching today. PCN proudly brings you coverage of the Pennsylvania State Legislature. We show you the State House and Senate floor proceedings as they happen, unedited and complete. Our mission includes committee meetings, budget hearings, interviews with prominent legislators, and other public policy forums. PCN is your destination for the best in Pennsylvania legislative coverage. Stream for free with PCN Select or watch on PCN TV.
Doors of the House. Prayer today will be offered by Representative Davidson. Immediately thereafter, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Members and guests will please rise as able.
Creator, as we come together as a body to serve our Commonwealth, give us strength to change our world for good today and every day. Help us to be peacemakers in our communities through acts of mercy, both large and small, feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, nursing the sick. Remind us of our calling to love, and dear God, please enlarge our hearts